Hi, this is John Ondo from Marketing Media and Cupcakes. And before we get into today's episode, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. We're back after being gone for over 4.5 years. And I hope you get a chance to listen to episode 77, where we explain why we were gone for so long and that we're back for at least 3 more episodes. Angel and I are big supporters of entrepreneurship, and we love small businesses and faith-based businesses. And we just want to encourage you through our podcast each week. What's going to determine if we continue with more episodes will be the response. Subscribe to us on your platform. Send us an email at john@ondomedia.com. That would help us know you're listening and you want more episodes. So thank you so much, and let's get into today's episode.
This is the small business podcast that is sweeter than all the rest. Marketing, media, and cupcakes.
Welcome to episode 7 of Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes. I'm John Ondo, and with me is my beautiful, lovely wife, Angel.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited about, we're doing this as the second half. We started last week on episode 6 with my good friend Bill Harris, who is with us today. Hi, Bill. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you, John and Angel?
I'm good. We got into this last week, and we ran out of time. I knew about halfway through the program we weren't going to get through all this. But basically, have you ever had problems with dealing with people? I do all the time, and I have a small business, and I've worked in larger organizations, and you know, I've transitioned through the old days of analog television to digital and all these newfangled things and cell phones. But the one thing that I just find the hardest thing to tackle is dealing with people. People are all different. Everybody's wired different. And if you can get a real handle on working with people and your clients, you are way ahead of the game. I mean, Angel, you've shared about different instances in your past, and even dealing with clients for cupcakes. You have some clients who are like, I need A, B, C, and D, and you have other clients who are like, I don't know, and it's hard, isn't it?
It is hard, and that's I've always tried to learn, especially in the customer service part, is because I'm not face to face with a person. It's their voice, so I am very attuned to listening to people, because I'm trying to figure out, where are they? Are they talking fast? Are they talking slow? Do they sound unsure, or do they sound confident? Do they sound angry? Do they sound whatever? So I'm always listening to someone. So for me, sometimes when I'm dealing with the cupcake part of the business, where people just send me emails, that's more of like, maybe we should chat.
Bill is coming into the mix here because he's helping us with this whole engineering of people. And the DISC assessment is what he does. He facilitates these, and it's a survey that you go online. And Angel and I both took this in the past week, and we get this big, humongously detailed report about how we should work, how we should talk to other people. And it really is an incredible guide. So just for people who didn't tune in, and you might want to jump back to episode 6 if you haven't listened to it first, because you're jumping in halfway now. But just in a quick recap, Bill, tell us a little bit about the DISC assessment and how it works.
Well, DISC is an acronym, DISC, and it basically stands for, the D stands for dominance. That's persons who put emphasis on accomplishing results and getting to the bottom line. The I in that acronym is for influencing, and that relates to persons who put emphasis on influencing and persuading others. They're very people-oriented, very relationship-oriented. The S stands for the steadiness personality. I call them the steady Eddie. These persons place emphasis on cooperation, and they're very sincere people and very dependable. The C in the DISC, DISC, represents conscientiousness. These are persons who are quite accurate and are quite detail-oriented. They strive for accuracy. And so when you do the assessment, John, as you and Angel have done, you can come out as one of 4, or perhaps a blend of any 2 or 3 of those personality types. And with that goes a certain cluster of predictable behavioral characteristics. And of course, once you've done that with somebody and you know those characteristics, you know what their needs are and how to approach them, how to relate with them better. That's what it's all about.
So, Bill, if you know what your disc is, so like I do now, but
Hmm.
you have others who either haven't taken it, can't take it, whatever, is there still a benefit to share your results with them? To say, it feels very much like a, hey, look at me. This is how you should, talk to me or
Hmm.
communicate
Hmm.
with me. Is there any benefit to sharing that information with someone, even if they may not be familiar with it or
Oh,
have taken
definitely.
it themselves?
You certainly want in order to improve relationships, you certainly want people to understand you. And maybe you have to be the first person to reach out to share with them your inner self so that they can better understand you because there may be a situation where things aren't matching up quite right. The person may think they're approaching the right way. And when you can use this as a tool to show them what your needs really are, what your desires are like, and the way you're wired, it gives them a better understanding so that they know that they should back off of certain things that maybe they thought were things they should approach you with, or maybe they should come on a little stronger with certain things that they had backed off of. Absolutely. And then you might even be able to get them interested in doing the assessment so that they could better understand themselves and others.
Bill, it does seem like Bill, and I it's funny. I've got an 11-year-old son who, like all fathers, I'm constantly beating him up over, well, here's the classic example. We're coming back from baseball practice right before we recorded this show.
Uh-huh.
He's got practice tomorrow. I said, keep your gear in the car. You've got practice tomorrow. 1 minute later, we pull in. He gets out of the car and starts getting his stuff out of the trunk. Hey, I just told you leave the stuff in
Uh-huh.
the trunk. I forgot. And it's very easy for, and I don't know, this might not apply obviously for kids, but it's very easy for us to look at somebody in the workplace who works with us, or maybe a client who's supposed to, or a subcontractor even, and
Hmm.
say, hey, I told you this 6 times, but really it probably just didn't register because we
Yep.
didn't tell them the right way. But
Uh-huh.
and we carry that baggage around too, where I sit around and maybe somebody beat me up as a new employee. You're not detailed oriented enough, or you don't spell words properly on these forms or something, and
Hmm.
then you think, oh, I stink, and it's not that I stink, it's just that's not my strong point. Is Tell me
That's
a little
right.
bit about how this really can set people free as far as in their especially for entrepreneurs and small business owners like ourselves, who typically are creative and we're a little bit more emotional because we're invested in this.
Hmm.
How does that fix some of that?
Well, what we do is after we have gone into a business or corporation and we've given everybody the assessments, and then we come back and we review the outcomes of their personality profiles. And then we can see that there may be, for instance, certain persons that have been placed in jobs that require them to be detail specific, very detail oriented, whereas in fact, that person may be wired to be more of a bottom line person. They may like bullet points rather than detailed data. And if the responsibility of that employee entails detailed work and they're bottom line oriented, you've got a mismatch there. And that can create stress for the employee, him or herself, and stress for the manager that has those high expectations for him or her. And so an assessment like this can help you to determine based on the amount of work that the workload, that is, whether it's more detailed or more bottom line oriented, where you ought to place employees. Now, another area, very quickly, John, that you need to consider is you can look at another report we call it the team dynamics report. It shows you how many of the total workforce you have is in the dominant area, the influencing area, the steadiness area, and the compliance area. And you can see gaps. Maybe you've got people that are quite bottom line oriented, like the D's and the I's, and you have very few, if any, in the S or the C, where more detail orientation is required. And then you see there's a gap there. There's a weakness there, particularly if you're a company that deals in a lot of detailed information
I can
or
see that a
detailed.
lot. Yeah.
Sure. And so this will let you see the lopsidedness that you have that you may not have been able to see prior to an assessment in this area. And you can make corrective efforts there.
I know I've seen that in a lot of places, and I've always been in more creative work environments, being like you in journalism. But you do have people who are, you know, extremely detailed in the sense of maybe how they approach their work, or they have to do a lot of research, versus somebody who is like, I'm just gonna wing it,
Hmm.
and I fall into that category. And one of the things I noticed in my assessments, so Angel and I did these assessments, and it came back, and one of the things I noticed it said, and I thought that's true, is like I tend to want to be surrounded by people who think like me.
Hmm.
I typically have in the past when I built production teams, I tended to lean toward people who were, you know, frankly, if somebody said, I really like you to put that in writing and have a detailed, I'm like, I don't really want to put you on my staff then, because I don't do that. And I like people who could just run with the gun and fly with things. And I could see where somebody who maybe gets hired that is not that, you know, forget sex, race, whatever, they feel like a minority. They feel like everybody else is running and gunning and doing their thing, and
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I'm not like that. Have you seen those kind of situations where people feel like I'm you know, the square peg in this round hole kind of?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's true. And again, it gets back to how you're wired, and if you are in fact misplaced, not purposely, but if you're a warm body and the manager just puts you here because we need a person here, not noting whether and what that person really brings to the table, and where they should be placed according to what it is they bring to the table. And the another thing the assessment will do for you is it will let you see an individual that you may need on the team who can get to the bottom line and make decisions very quickly when there's a position a circumstance that presents itself in that way. And a high D, a dominant personality, needs relatively few facts to come to a conclusion and make that decision and be willing to take the risk that's necessary for that particular decision. On the other hand, if you put a high D in a situation where you need to really do further assessment and there needs to be greater details, and if there's not a lot of detail, things are going to slip through the cracks. That D personality is going to let things slip through the cracks because he or she is not interested in all the details. The D and the I personalities are great starters, and it takes the S and the C personalities to come in behind to pick up the pieces and deal with the detailed follow through or follow up.
Okay.
See?
So, Bill, how do you suggest then a person like myself who does I am the high S. I
Hmm.
love the detail because I feel it's necessary.
Hmm.
How do you communicate then to somebody who is more in that D or I where they don't want it? They don't feel they need it, and yet I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so important. So how do you make how do you make that determination of what to give them? I've got
Yeah.
15 bullet points that are all I feel very important, and
Uh-huh.
yet they they don't want two of them. So how do I make that decision?
That could be a very difficult decision. I think that if you rally around a DISC assessment where that person as well as yourself begins to have an understanding of the personality profiles and the predictable cluster of behavioral characteristics that follow those personality profiles, and everybody has a better understanding, then that detailed person is not going to be they're not going to change their values. They're still detail oriented, but they'll learn to work with that person that's more bottom line oriented in those cases where the bottom line is needed.
Okay.
And they will and that bottom line person will gain a better understanding and an appreciation of why you require more details. And then the workload is going to have to be where it's possible, where it's logistically possible, separated along the lines where you can have the detailed persons handling the detailed work and the bottom line oriented people handling those kinds of decisions and actions that require little detail but more risk taking and more forward moving with the organization getting to the next level, which is what the D is interested in. The D wants to move in. The D and the I, these are persons that are fast-paced persons, Angel, and they want to get the ball rolling. They come in and they want to set the torch, and they want to climb that hill and expect everybody to come up there with them. The S and the C, the steadiness and the conscientious persons are saying, well, okay, if you're going to tell me how to get from point A to point B, I need to know the details about how we're going to get there. Because as I'm looking at the budget and as I'm looking at the resources we have, I don't think we can make it with that. And so let me give you a report that shows you what we're going to need, Mr. D, Mr. I, what we're going to need to get there. And everybody has to have some sort of a consensus and a respect for the other person and what they bring to the table so that it becomes a team effort with an appreciation all the way around.
You just said something there, Bill, and that means a lot because I for a time worked at a place with a definite high DI entrepreneur. Very, I mean, that's all this guy did. He's constantly doing stuff. He had a lot of businesses running, and but his attitude, which was frustrating to me as also a kind of a DI kind of guy, he would come in, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And he basically would say, I'm not interested in details and I'm going to go do it. But then, of course, it was kind of a control freak environment where I couldn't put we're just going to, why is the broom over there? So there was very much kind of a D, and maybe, I don't know if you call that a C or controlling or a detail oriented.
The high C personality, John, is one who must have control in order to accomplish his goals. He must have control. In fact, the biggest two fears of a dominant personality is one, losing control, and close to it is if he loses control, he can't have the control to make the decisions and feels that he's going to be taken advantage of. The two biggest fears of a dominant person, losing control and being taken advantage of.
So for, I guess the how-to then for somebody like me, as I've learned this with clients too, is oftentimes when I know I've got a project and of course there is, for me, kind of being an I want to get it right the first time. But one of the things, and so I get very emotional when somebody says, well, we have some changes in what you did. And I'm like, but it was perfect. But I've learned in time that I actually need sometimes I'll leave some visible, not quite intentional, but they'll say, why was that way? And I said, quite honestly, I didn't know which way you wanted to do it. So we can do this or we can do that, giving them control of a couple small details that they could say, okay, well, that's a great idea. We'll make the color blue there. So sometimes I don't want to say I lay a trap, but I do leave some openings to say, here's where we need to make this project go, because I know you don't understand the video production, but I am going to allow some options. Would you like this, or would you like the eye doctor? Is A or B? Would you like C or D? And it seems like, and they feel good because they're like, I participated in the production. I controlled things, but really, I kind of gave them control of what I wanted them to have control of.
Two things there, John, that are working for you. One is you gave options, and all people, I think all four of the personality profile types love options. When you just give a person one option, you're just pigeonholing them. You're just pushing them back in a corner, and you're saying to them, it's either this or the highway, and people, it's difficult to work like that. But when you give people options, then they feel a lot better about that. The second thing very quickly is that you score high in the C, over the midline in the conscientious style. Your wife, Angel, is even higher than you are there. Let me tell you one important thing to understand about a C conscientious person. It's very difficult for them to deal with criticism of their work because they are so get it right oriented. It crushes them when somebody really disregards their love of details and trying to get it right. And you come in without feeling and you're crushing them and criticizing their work. It's very hard for them to take. And this is something that particularly the high D needs to understand, but as well, the high I, the S to a smaller extent, but really that high C personality, very sensitive to criticism against their work.
When we talk about small business, and there's typically, in most cases, and here's what I'd love to hear if it's any different, it's 9 times out of 10, it's kind of a D and an I who was the entrepreneur who started the company, who had the put the risk in. I probably don't see a lot of SC people starting small businesses, I'm assuming. Or
They're not
is
big
that not
risk
right?
takers. They're not big risk takers. You're absolutely right.
But is
Uh,
it best for a person, and here's Angel. Angel is
Well,
an S and a
I was
C.
just going to say, you just nailed me on the head. And the only reason I am doing any of this or have done anything is because John said, let's do this.
How best should that man when you maybe have that rare case of somebody who's detail oriented and just wanted to do their own business? Do they need to have somebody that D and I alongside, or is how does that work?
I think that particularly in the area of marketing, an I personality would be very good. The I personality, when you look at their profile, John, they are very people oriented. They're very persuasive, getting to an audience, getting to a market that can bring those people in the door to try those cupcakes out for the first time, and that I personality is very articulate in terms of persuading the persons to come by that store and try it out. So while Angel is busy with the details of making those cupcakes, making sure they're right and that they meet her standards and the like, you as an I or someone like you would be very good going out the door to sound the trumpet in her behalf to get them to come in.
Literally, it's creepy for no more than you were asked of those very simple 26 maybe questions, and it was basically 4 words: which one is most like you, which one is least like you, and that's all you
Hmm.
were literally doing.
That's right.
And I really tried so hard to say, I'm different. I've done this job for 26 years. I'm different. I used to not say a word, and now I don't have a problem opening my mouth. And yet I'm still reading this going, are you for real? But it's still so true, because like the very last thing, you may sometimes overthink or overexert yourself on standard or routine procedures. Yeah. All day, every day. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
I guess I haven't grown, which is
Well,
disappointing, but
it doesn't
I
mean
was
you
laughing
haven't
at
grown.
myself.
It doesn't mean you haven't grown, though, Angel. Sometimes that caution is very necessary so that the right decision is made. But then when you get stuck, or when you're into the area of analysis paralysis, call on someone like John who can make a decision quicker than you can based on his personality profile to help you out in that regard. Call on somebody that has a high D personality if there's risk taking that's involving taking the cupcake business to the next level. Call on someone who is a high C like yourself, who may be able to grapple with the numbers in the business so that you can analyze to determine, well, what's it going to take dollar wise to get us to the next level.
Your wife is a small business owner, although it sounds like her
Yep.
business is pretty big now. Tell me a little bit about this. You've gone in and helped her with her businesses, some of the results and things you've seen, because they're working with kids, and that alone makes me, want to hit my head against the wall. So, how does that work?
Well, Ann is she's a retired educator. She taught kindergarten for 18 years, and then she saw so many kindergarten kids, and when she was in kindergarten, teaching kindergarten, she saw so many kids coming into kindergarten who couldn't do the work. And she says, I want to start a daycare so I can prepare children for kindergarten. So that the Child Development Center, or daycare that she has now, is 13 years old. It's a 5-star rated, state rated daycare. And then 8 years ago, she founded a charter school, and that's K through the 6th grade. So her younger daughter runs the daycare, and she is working with her older daughter, who's also a teacher at Toledo Public Schools, and she's swinging into studies now in education, into learning to become a principal, and will eventually be able to help her in the area of her chartered school. And so, with their personality types and with the love they have for the disc, they've been bringing me into both the daycare and the charter school. And for the last few years, I have been doing this assessment for the faculty and staff at the school and for the faculty and staff at the daycare. And it's working wonders. And keep in mind that about this DISC program, it's the leading personal assessment tool in the world. It's used by over 1 million people a year, and it's the oldest program, over 100 years old, and it's the best using program all around the world.
I would never want to put anybody out of business, Bill, but here's the thing.
Uh-huh.
Just to be honest with me, if it, and I'm always, well, your wife's an educator. It seems like if we taught this in school at high school level, we would solve a lot of problems with
Isn't that something?
communication.
You know,
Well,
well, let me say this. After I came out of television news, 22 years there, I went into the area of financial services and learned to be a financial advisor, and went to the College for Financial Planning to get boned up for that career. And I began to say the same thing about finances, and I started doing seminars even in schools, high schools, on finances, because I said if they would teach this in high school, we wouldn't have the problems we're having. And that same is true with human behavior that we're talking about tonight on the DISC personality profiles. If
well,
they teach this in schools, we'd have so fewer problems, I think.
Bill, tell us how we can find out more and get a disc assessment going for our listener.
Well, I'll give you two bits of information. One, I'll give you my cell number, and then I'll give you my email address. And I forgot to give you that on the last program,
Well,
by the
we'll put
way.
it on the link. It'll be fine.
Oh, okay, but my cell number is area code 419-340-2006. And again, 419-340-2006. And my email is simply, it's all lowercase, Bill Harris at B as in boy, E as in Edward, X as in X-ray .net. So it's Bill Harris at bex.net. And I can just I can email you some attachments. One would be, there's a 2-page flyer on the DISC system that really gives you a good capsule summary of what DISC is all about. And I can attach that along with 2.5 pages of frequently asked questions about the DISC program. And then I could, of course, put my bio with that. And you'd have all that information that you'd need to get to get started with me, and we could set up something by phone. I'm in Ohio, and I'm dealing right now with the state of Rhode Island for some things that they're interested in the distance. So we're starting out by phone, and eventually I'll probably fly up there. And
You do stuff all over the
stuff.
country, I know, with this. Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
I surely do.
How are you going to be different? Because as most of you may know, Angel has a regular full-time job, and then she has the cupcake business inside. How is this going to change you with your work?
Well, I think what it's going to do, and again, because I feel that at times I don't know. I won't say what I think I am, because who knows if somebody might be listening that I work with. But I definitely I'm going to share some of these as reminders for those who I report to and on up, just as hey, let's not forget, because I think, again, we get comfortable, so to speak, with how we treat people. I'm definitely this is going to benefit me as I look more into John's as well. But to be able to take this back to my full-time job and share the information with others to remind them how to deal with me, which would be nice. The last few years of my actual work life are more pleasant.
You're not done yet, anyway. And the thing I like about this too is understanding, and in my work with media and film and television, it really is a collaborative effort. And one of the things it's been very hard for me, and Bill, you can understand this, is that you get a vision for a project and you want to see it through, and then somebody comes up and says, I don't understand what you just did. And it's very hard. Well, you must be an idiot. And you have to realize that not everybody sees things through your glasses or hears things through your ears.
Yep.
And it is a collaborative. Like what I love about DIC or DISC is that if you're high D or a low C or whatever you are, it doesn't mean you're imperfect, or it doesn't mean you need to change who you are. Nope. It just means that's what you've been designed to be, and embrace that, because nobody is a perfect across the board thing. It needs to be, I work with a D and a I, and somebody else works with an S and a C. And that's, I think, the beauty of it is it is teamwork. And it sounds corny what I'm saying, but when we work together, we really are stronger. And so I encourage you, if you've got a small business, you've got a few employees, this is worth your time investing in. And if you're just like me and you're one guy, you work with clients, this is good, because this helps remind me when I do have a client that gets me frustrated because they call me up and they throw, okay, that's a this or that's a that, it's a D, and I need to communicate back to them with hey, it would really help me out if you put that in writing. It doesn't have to be, it could be bullet points, but I need that in writing because I will forget, because you're one of, fortunately, many clients I have, and I need to have it in writing. And then they'll understand that. And then because they're D, you understand, well, they'll just float on to the next problem. They're not upset. So, so this has been great, Bill, and I appreciate you taking the time for a couple of shows, and we want to have you back on. Bill is our first official guest on Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes, and he got 2 episodes.
Woohoo!
It's a pretty big deal here. If you like our show, follow us on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Share it with others. We'll have all the links to Bill and the disc assessment on there as well. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode of Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes.
Connect with John and Angel via Facebook and Instagram and let us know your thoughts. Marketing, Media, and Cupcakes is a production of Ondo Media.